For years then, we haven't even copyrighted our material. We allow people to copy it, to give it away. That's what we want.
There's a reason the worship song asks, "Open the eyes of my heart, Lord," and not, "Open the eyes of my brain." Welcome to Paulogia, where a former Christian takes a look at the claims of Christians. But before we get to that, I wanted to tell you a little bit about me, my journey, my goals for this channel, and why my first focus is creation today and a certain Eric Hovind. Raised in a Christian home, I was a believer and follower of Jesus for over 3 decades. I attended a Bible college and was later active in youth ministry, encouraging hundreds of teens to memorize the Bible as divine words. I believed it. All of it. Despite my vague notions that science and religion had some areas of conflict, I was too busy with career, family, and church activities to investigate such things for myself. But my teachers, pastors, and Christian mentors declared victory with such great confidence. What was the point?
If we were to just look at the evidence, everybody would be a creationist.
That's right.
And that's the truth.
This was their job, and I assumed they'd obviously done their homework on this stuff. I was a busy guy, so I was happy just to sit in a desk or a pew and take their word for it. When science and the Bible clash, the Bible ultimately wins. So they told me. Trust us on this. The end. Until one day, I was innocently researching ancient eras for a graphic novel I was writing. For the story, I needed to know the scientific consensus as to when dinosaurs went extinct. 65 million years ago, Google told me. Okay. To appeal to the broadest possible audience, I went with the science in my writing. But I made a mental note to cycle back someday to clear up this cognitive dissonance that was creating.
Cognitive dissonance is when your mind tries to hold 2 conflicting ideas simultaneously. It gives you a horrible feeling.
I let that splinter grow for a while, until I couldn't ignore it anymore. Other Christians had obviously figured this out, so I figured I'd just start with what they found. I searched online for the best books on creation, the flood, and other niggling topics, and everything seemed to point to the Answers books from Answers in Genesis.
The answer to this question that we just talked about the flood, and other answers are discussed in the Answer book, which is a great resource I recommend every Christians have.
Yes, that one, Eric. We'll keep that ringing endorsement of yours in mind for later. At this time, though, I didn't know anything about Answers in Genesis or its founder, Ken Ham. He had not yet had his famous debate with Bill Nye the Science Guy, nor started on his controversial Ark Encounter theme park. I'm obviously much more familiar with him now. In good faith, I ordered these books along with some other top recommendations and got ready to absorb this proof of the truth of the Bible so that I could learn it, squash my doubts, and carry on with the rest of my life. But then I started reading. And reading. What I found was not the intellectual honesty I was craving. Instead, I was being fed answers that I found vague, insulting, and outright disingenuous. Instead of tackling the hard questions in any serious way, it was this kind of discourse.
Yes, they put all the materials in a box. They came back the next day, and through an act of randomness, this is what we have.
If we just leave them there like that,
Okay.
then maybe by the end of the show, one of them will have magically produced a copy of Microsoft Windows on itself that it will just have developed from nothing.
Now, at the time, I knew relatively little about the claims of the theory of evolution or the Big Bang, but I knew enough to know that these were comically inaccurate misrepresentations of the science I wanted to challenge and refute. I was embarrassed for these writers. Surely the absolute truth of the Bible would have nothing to fear from the sharpest, smartest minds that science could offer.
If this is true, it ought to be able to take on questions like that. It ought to be able to take on those hard, difficult questions. Why am I a Christian?
Right? But the deeper I delved, the more hollow I found each defense to be. I'd not yet read a single secular source, and I already knew creationists had nothing. My teachers, my pastors, my church, knowingly or unknowingly, they had all lied to me.
When you find out you've been lied to and all of a sudden you learn the truth, boy, you just want to go shout it from the rooftops.
I went on to devour the likes of Richard Dawkins, Carl Sagan, Lawrence Krauss, Stephen Hawking, Charles Darwin, and many others. The science was undeniable. Whatever you may think, I didn't want to change my mind, to disbelieve, or to take up a life of sin. Despite my search for the opposite and everything it would ultimately cost me, I couldn't deny the truth. The universe was billions of years old, and humans share common ancestry with all other life on the planet. The plain reading of the Bible was simply wrong. Obviously wrong. Now, I want to be clear. Accepting scientific truths like evolution with common descent is not the same thing as rejecting the Bible. Millions of Christians, including prominent scientists, church leaders, and the Pope himself, find ways to reconcile these things. This channel is less about religious claims and more about my frustration towards unnecessary science denial. Feeling a little lost, I happened upon Seth Andrews, the thinking atheist. He was taking on the claims of the poster boy for willingly ignorant Christianity, Joshua Fierstein. Seth is a former pastor whose eyes were opened and his story meant a lot to me, but that's best left for another day. But his existence led me to discover a whole community of skeptics on YouTube, seriously discussing the creationist claims. There was the Atheist Experience, Aaron Ra, Thunderfoot, Logic, Armored Skeptic, and a slew of amazing others. I binge-watched it all, learning so much and feeling like I was home, though never imagining I might dip my toe into the same waters. Fast forward through an atheist outing not of my design, family upheaval, serious health concerns, big life changes, and writing a blog that helped me sort through it all, up until now, where I kind of feel like I'm through the storm. And I find myself coming back to YouTube, seeing the same array of Christians and creationists continuing to spew false information and outright lies to indoctrinate the helpless kids in their fold. There's William Lane Craig, Kent Hovind, Eric Hovind, Ray Comfort, Kirk Cameron, Michael Behe, Ken Ham and his Answers in Genesis team, and a lot of others, each more ridiculous than the last. And I find that the anger and passion to expose them still burns in me. I need to get that out. Insert snicker at Canadian accent here. At the same time, many of the old guard of debunking channels have either left YouTube or have moved on to fresher topics in the world of skepticism, and they're doing a great job. And there are some great new channels of young voices taking up the fight, and you should follow them all. But it's time for me to contribute too. I've decided to start with the Creation Today ministry led by Eric Hovind. Ken Ham and Answers in Genesis may seem like a more natural target for me, given my story, but his debates with Bill Nye have already drawn fact-checkers far more credentialed than I. Plus, Ken isn't really producing as much content anymore, outside of his tourist facilities in Kentucky. Whereas Eric Hovind, a friend of Answers in Genesis, seems to have his face everywhere. His most viewed material isn't taken on as often, and I find him particularly dangerous. Don't get me wrong, I'm itching to take on the claims of those I listed, and many I didn't, but I've got to start somewhere. So Eric, are you ready for this?
Well, the Bible says be ready always, so we're going to see if we are ready always.
If you'd like to take that journey with me, click subscribe and I'll see you wherever science is being denied in the name of ancient books.